I decided to focus more in to make sure that we're hitting specific standards, that personalized and customized choice does not mean here's 9 things you pick from what you do.
We had kind of just outlined what we were going to do to get the kids to show that they've really mastered the standards. And then after we had done that, that's when we went back in and we plugged in the technology. So what tool would be great for this? What do we have available that the kids could do to really get them engaged with the technology?
Okay, I need to have these different entry levels for my students who are coming in with different levels of knowledge, and then, how can I give them different choice, and how can I make sure that they have activities that they get to choose from that are based on their interest levels and their learning style. So it was really...
We covered 12 standards through this unit, and I bet the kids didn't even realize how much work they were doing through the whole process.
And they've loved it. They've loved it. I've heard so many times, like, this is the best, or they are just so intrinsically motivated. I am not pushing them to do anything. They're pushing themselves, and they want to keep doing it. Choice and all of the input that they get to have on their own education.
The tool to get the kids working on different things, different path, different pace, but using those solid teaching techniques, we were able to really leverage Schoology to make the most use out of your time.
So we really went in depth. We looked at our map, we looked at our standards, and we figured out what we need to hit in this unit and how we can make it fit within our novel of The Tale of Despero.
Like a light bulb went off for you at that point, because you were like, oh yeah, so if I'm tracking which standards the students are progressing through, it is difficult if it's 9 separate activities that are not connected by the standard. So we picked, the specific standards to this unit and then designed from there. How are we going to activate what they already know? How can we use what they've already done and bring that and connect it with Unit 5? We use a lot of the components of a traditional lesson to really blend where we're going with using the technology as the tool.
To be clear, those first couple of activities that the students did, they were a whole group.
The focusing, the activating prior knowledge, yes. We did a quick stand-up, sit-down. We've talked about context clues before in a previous unit, so it was more of a review. Now, if they had used context clues by looking up unknown words in a dictionary, they would stand up. Read sentences before and after, and about half of them stood up for this one. And then 4 minutes. Okay. 4 minutes. It was a real quick review, and then we talked about
the assignments broken up into must-do versus can-do, and the must-do were the ones that students had to show mastery of the standard.
Their must-dos had to be complete before they could even go on to the can-dos. The first one that we started on was the vocabulary, and the wording for the standard, and the wording on our concept map, and how we can make it fit, and what activity we could do, and if we needed to make it leveled and differentiated for our students, or if we could do a whole group. And that's the one that we finally decided on. We did a discussion board, and that was a whole group for the students, so they're all interacting together.
And then you go to using clues to determine storage. This is what you have to do. Lester was guilty of perfidy by calling the Mouse Council to discuss his... and then you have to comment on 2 people.
Go a little slower.
Yeah. Oh, Christine just commented. And then there's more up here. There's mine. I thought Facebook.
How did you decide on, or at what point did they start the discussion board, and what were the questions?
What they were required to do was to write what they needed, write what they did, what word they think is best, and defend it. But then the second part of it was that they had to come back and they had to look at other people and critique their thoughts. And then obviously, I mean, their responses looked a little differently, but they were able to discuss with each other, they were able to provide feedback and defend their reasoning, and they all did a really nice job. No matter what level they were able to enter at, they all kind of came out at the exact same spot.
And we made sure that even if the student was typically at a lower level, the expectation was still a higher level thinking task that they were asked to do. You also spent time teaching them how to communicate effectively in an academic setting in a discussion board.
And that it's not enough to say, I agree or I disagree. So a lot of them had to toggle back and forth because if they started it right away, there wasn't anybody to comment on. So then they would go on to another task, they would check back 10 minutes later, they would comment on somebody's, and they would go to something else and then come back so that they completed that. Yeah.
And they were, the one thing that I was really impressed about is not only were they engaged in going back and checking, so they were vested in that discussion board. They wanted to know what people said about what they wrote.
So does the discussion board run all the way through the whole unit? So it's always open?
It's always open, yep. And that's when I had pulled them for a small group. So for my students who struggled the most with it, you know, our vocabulary one looked like they had 4 different words and they had to choose which one fit the best for our unknown word. And then they had to defend it. So for my lowest guys, I pulled them and I did a small group activity again, reviewing context clues, even though we had done a whole group with that before and they have known what it is. I did it again with them just to kind of level it more, give them more scaffolding help and help them, you know, get to that standard.
Once we figured out what they were really asked to do to show the mastery, that's when we were able to differentiate and figure out what type of support is a student who may be a little bit behind in writing. What are they going to need so that they can eventually get to that point where they're on standard and they're on grade level where they're supposed to be.
And so I had 3 different starting points for each of the students. Within each task there were screencasts that I gave directions so I didn't have to stand in front of them and give them long 10-minute directions for each one. So they were able to watch it when they were ready for it. So I wanted to make sure that I hit every single thing so that they were able to be self-sufficient and didn't need to come running to me and not sure what to do or they wouldn't get stuck. So I made sure that with my screencast that it was really, really explained each step, and you know, I even went from the very beginning when you open the document to when you submitted the document. That way there was...
So what, talk a little bit about the supports in Group 1. I noticed that when you were doing your screencast, you actually were modeling, and actually in 2 as well. But talk a little bit about that extra support that you gave.
The one, for the narrative writing, there was 6 separate events and 6 separate pieces of dialogue. And when I did my screencast, I wanted to make sure that I started from the very beginning for how to even make a copy of my document and then how to start writing on it. And they had to do that first.
I accomplished I finished my dialogue thing,
On the graphic organizer?
Yeah, and I finished my second one, now I'm on to chapter 14.
Okay.
The second group came in where instead of having 6 events, I just had a beginning, middle, and end. So it was less scaffolded for them, but it was still drawn out where they would have to really stop, think, and do all this preparation first.
On this, what are you gonna do next?
I'm gonna make a whole story about what's gonna happen in chapter 14.
And then my highest kids were able to start just with the writing piece. They didn't need any of the scaffolding. They were able to just jump right into writing. The 3, they still had a screencast for 3, but it was much less detailed. They knew, you know, a lot of these students have been in different STAR intervention groups that they really shine with technology and
Narrative writing.
Alright, so can you show me that real quick, or what you've come up with so far?
What happens next? Where's my... Alright, so there's a screencast of Miss Bosser telling us what to do. She does.
And your rubric, right? So you know
Yeah,
what to
and
put
our
in grading.
rubric.
Okay.
I didn't know that. Okay,
And that's hers.
That's what I have.
So you already submitted it?
Yes, I submitted it twice.
Can you fix it still or no?
Yeah, if you just go to Google Docs and you submit it again, then it'll still work.
How did your role shift with those screencasts?
It gave me so much more free time. You know, I was able to really just kind of check in with students and see how they were doing, see their progress, see if they needed help, you know, which gave me time to really help the students who are still struggling. And, you know, I was able to focus more on them, and I didn't have to worry about the technology piece on this aspect. So, you know, I may have had to help some of my students who weren't sure still how to organize the events and take that from the event to the dialogue, and I was able to sit with them and help them instead of having to run around and, you know, troubleshoot technical issues.
So I'm hearing you say that your time was more focused, and what you were able, the feedback and the support you were able to give the students was more individualized.
Yeah.
And I think you're also able to, for those students that are the high achievers that oftentimes don't get that support because we just think they're going to be fine, you're able to push them a little bit farther.
Doing your narratives, right?
Yes.
All right.
So how did you decide which assignments to push out? So who would need the scaffolding at a 1 or a 2 or a 3?
And I've worked with them throughout. I've been able to see, you know, who needed the seriously scaffolded help of here's events 1, here's events 2, here's events 3, 4, 5, and 6. And then I was able to see who, you know, is so close and they almost get it, but they just need a little extra help with that organization piece. So all that we've worked on to this point is what helps me know, you know, if they're going to enter at 1, 2, or 3.
So how can we make sure that they're really incorporating those details and the dialogue to support the events? Because that's what the standard is asking them to do.
You know, being able to put the Common Core aligned rubrics was huge because my students were able to see exactly how they are going to be graded. And
So talk a little bit about student choice. So you said that there's 4 tasks within this unit. And they don't have to go in order. So talk a little bit about how students pick what they want to do and why you allow that.
some students would have rather started with the discussion board because they really enjoy that kind of thing and that's their strength, so they wanted to start there. Other students wanted to start with the poetry because that's something that they enjoyed. So
which one are you doing?
Context clues. I mean, not content clues. Narrative writing.
Why do you do that one first?
Because I think that harder things has to go first than easier things.
Because I like to predict what would happen next.
So you did what you liked first,
Yes.
and now you're doing the one that you don't like quite as much?
Yes.
So at what point did you start letting students choose about activities that they can choose to do or not do?
that part, because they already put in a survey what role they wanted to play, if they wanted to be a cartoonist, a screenwriter, an animator. So in order to actually get to that can do, they had to submit their must do's, which was a nice checkpoint.
I'm doing animator, and right now I'm looking at videos to how to do different cartoons.
This is my must-do, and this I have to write what's going on in there, but I have to take the main part of the paragraphs and put them in my slides in my PowerPoint.
Find their individual likes, and they really went towards what was their interest, what's their preference, and they were able to, I'm more interested in drawing, I'm going to be the cartoonist.
So which project are you actually working on right now?
Cartoonist.
Cartoonist?
And
What are all those tabs?
this one is my teacher's website, so I can get on here. Then if I click that, you can take me here.
And what's that right there?
My graphic organizer, so I can keep finishing this.
And what's that you're doing?
It's like a chapter for all the ones I did right then here.
Or I love writing and acting, I want to be the screenwriter. So this kind of let them shine with what their strengths are.
I really saw.
So you just started.
Yeah.
What you doing here?
A screenplay.
Say it again?
A screenplay.
Okay, what do you got so far?
We have this. We have a play about Desper in the dungeon, and then at the end he gets out, and then he's gonna find his mom.
Did you write out all the words?
Yes.
Okay, where are those? Let's see.
They're right there.
And then you're just recording yourselves here?
Yeah.
And this is where those 21st century skills really came in. And we were also, when we planned these activities, we purposely thought about different learning styles.
They had so many screens open at the same time because they would have, especially my students who were at the 1 or 2 for the narrative writing, they would have open their graphic organizer and they would have open their writing piece and then they would have open the screen or this animation. So that way they could use everything and they could draw it together because you're right, they had to use those previous must-dos to do their can-dos. So by giving them the choice, they're still all doing the exact same thing, but I'm giving them a choice which makes them so much more invested in what they're doing because they feel like they have a role in the driver's seat and they get to decide how they want their day to look.
So I noticed when we're in the classroom, you have students sitting everywhere. They're obviously having choices about that. I mean, how did you decide to allow that to happen? Why does it work?
This is not free time. That when you are wherever you want to be, that way you are learning and you are still doing work. But I know that if I'm sitting in one seat for, an hour or 2 hours, my mind's going to go crazy. So, I try and think most of how I want to learn and give them the opportunities to do that. So, I had some students who were sitting in my back cubbies with the lights off and headphones on, and they were completely shut out from the rest of the world, and that's how they worked best. And then I have other students who will be sitting on my front carpet with 6 other kids, and they're talking and they're doing everything, but they're still working. And even if I'm talking, I can check in on them, and I see that they are really hard at work. And I have some students who are standing up, or some students who are on swivel chairs and kind of moving around. So. If I'm trying to control everything, I don't think that school is going to be as fun, and I don't think that the learning is going to be as powerful as giving them the choices to do something that's simple, and it's worked out.
I think you've also really built a culture of collaboration by allowing that, and respect. So not everybody learns the same way, and you've also promoted their self-awareness. There's, no matter what, they're still expected to get to that level 3. So you've set that high standard for everybody.
They know if I'm busy, they can go to anybody else, and I see that all the time where I'll have one kid walk over with the laptop to somebody else and say, I'm not sure how to do this, can you help me? And they're willing to take risks and try things that they probably wouldn't have done if they weren't. And I let them know all the time that I fail, and it's okay to fail. And if they say something and it's wrong, then we talk about it. And there's never the issue of, well, that's wrong. Why would you say that?